Good afternoon, hockey fans. What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Odd Man Rush, brought to you by Intense Nutrition, coming into you live on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. David's Work, your host, here with you once again. I cover the Panthers for Local 10 News, and I'm also here as a part of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Great to be here once again. And wow, right? What an amazing week since our last episode. The return of the comeback cats, cardiac cats, crazy pull your hair out, amazing excitement cats, whatever you want to call them. I mean, holy crap. Some pretty remarkable comebacks last week. And just a whole lot of fun to watch and to see it all go down. I mean, it's been something that we've seen building for the last couple of years, and it keeps happening, right? Over and over and over. So talking about the comeback cats, I think one of the keys, and we've kind of heard it talked about between the players a lot over the last couple of years, is how confident they are in terms of their ability to do it. That when they fall behind by 1 goal, 2 goals, 3 goals, no big deal. Nobody's panicking on the bench. Nobody's screaming at each other. You know, they're not biting each other's head off. They're not pointing the finger at one another. They're just kind of like, all right, I guess we got a little bit more work to do this time. All right, I guess it's going to be that much more exciting for our fans. And I mean, for good reason, right? They've pulled it off many times. We've seen it happen, not just this year. I think kind of what was so crazy is just how it happened kind of out of nowhere with the 2-3 goal comebacks, and then the 3-time comeback against the Blues where they were down by 1 3 times, and then you had the 3 goal comebacks against the Caps, which was pretty amazing. A game where the Ovechkins were really controlling it from, dominant first period, pretty steady second period. And then the Panthers just did what, we've seen them do before, where all of a sudden something clicks and off they go. And then the Buffalo game, it was another really bad first period. Right. But I mean, at least the sense among myself and some of my colleagues in the press box, nobody was worried that they were coming back that night. I mean, was it Aaron Dell, the goaltender for Buffalo, was really standing on his head and amazing. And the Panthers were, controlling play a lot. But I mean, even when it was 4-1, it was like, all right, can we just get the show on the road already? And I mean, sure enough, I think it was either 4-3 by the end of the second period, may have been tied. Either way, just pretty fun. And then the Blues game was good just because it was, the end of a homestand. You're about to go on a road trip against a really good St. Louis team. Fall behind again. Oh, man, we're trying to get off to a good start. They talked about it a lot last week. Bruno and a lot of the players were talking about how they wanted to get off to a fast start and now put themselves in that position again. And so to see them continue to bounce back against St. Louis before finally getting the lead, getting the win. I mean, getting the lead, tying the game, and then getting the shootout win, which forgive me, I just have no confidence when it comes to the shootouts. I don't like them that much anymore. I think they're fun. They're a gimmick, but to decide a game, especially a game where like one team can really be dominating for whatever reason, then you get to the skills competition. It's just, I'm over it. Pushing that aside. Awesome to see them get the win in the shootout. Anton Lundell, the amazing rookie, came through again. But yeah, that was just a pretty ridiculous week of come from behind wins. And like I said, it all just kind of starts with the confidence in the room, with the players just having this belief. And I mean, it's not just like blind logic and belief, right? Like they know they can do it. This is the most talented Panthers team probably ever constructed. It's all 4 lines coming at you in waves. And especially during the streak, when you say all 4 lines, because that 4th line of Luosterainen centering Lomberg and Hornquist has probably been the most consistent line. I mean, they've been pushing pace. They've been keeping control in the offensive zone, creating chances. I mean, it's awesome. Usually you're getting frustrated when another team's 4th line is dominating you. And look, it's happened. You see it happen a lot. Now it's the Panthers' 4th line that's absolutely dominant. In their own regard. I wouldn't say they're dominant in terms of like, against the top. Well, defensively, they're solid against the top line. So yeah, maybe, I mean, I've got to double check the possession numbers. I checked them after the Buffalo game. I know that line didn't get a lot of play during the St. Louis game. That was, a little bit of a different animal than the big comeback games. But anyway, not to get too far off topic. Basically, we've talked about this already a lot, but like what drives the Panthers, and not just these situations, but all situations, but it's why they're able to overcome, is just that they're such a machine when it comes to pushing the puck up the ice, turning the puck over, transitioning into offense. The defense are constantly jumping up and adding that extra element to a rush. That's why you see a lot of the odd man rushes go. Most of the time, there's a defenseman on the off wing because they saw what was going on. They recognized that they jumped up. And it's just that aggressive nature that really allows the Panthers to do what they do. So before I get to highlight a couple of guys, I do want to talk about some injury updates that we got today from Andrew Brunette after practice. During practice, Barkov was there, full participant. Duclair, full participant. Forsling, Ulevi, they were all there, all in regular color jerseys, all doing the same things as everybody else. They're all going to travel with the team on this road trip. They're all possible to play on this road trip. With Ulevi, I'm just kind of taking my, biding my time or whatever. We haven't seen him yet. It's been hard for him just to stay healthy, so I don't know how quickly they might rush him in. I would assume they're going to take their time, even though he was taken off of IR today. But as for Barkov, Forsling, Bruno did mention that they both could play on Tuesday. I think Duclair might be maybe further in the road trip because today was his first full practice back. Barkov and Forsling had both already had a couple of skates under there. But I mean, Barkov's been skating for, basically since he got hurt. He's been on the ice. So no surprise that they might be a little bit ahead of Duclair. But either way, all are possible to play on this road trip, which it's really great. And it kind of makes you wonder how the bottom of the lineup is going to trickle out, right? Because when you talk about like Maxime Mamin, who was skating on the top line with Barkov and Verhaeghe during practice today, Mamin has had a pretty amazing couple of games. Now, granted, it's only a couple of games, but the best we've seen out of him in his second tenure with the Panthers. And kind of getting back to what I was saying before about the team mentality, it's amazing what a little confidence can do for a guy, right? Because, we know that Mamin's got size. We know that he can skate well, but he's finally using those attributes to his advantage at this level. You want to see him using his body. You want to see him harder on the puck. And that's exactly what he's been. He's been attacking. He's been pushing guys into the boards. He's been kind of muscle guys off pucks. You haven't seen him play passive at all, which I think was a big issue. His first several games in the lineup was that it was just you kind of got that I'm just happy to be here vibe. And no, like you want to be in there like hardcore pounding. You want to be affecting and impacting play and going after the puck. And so that's what he's been doing. Really, he kind of took a spoonful of Ryan Lomberg and put that to work. So, but good for Mamin. It's nice to see him just kind of, entering the chat, right? But I think, in terms of like when the Barkovs come back and the Duclairs come back and that trickle down effect starts to happen with the forwards, obviously it's going to be the more consistent guys that are going to get those spots. And when you think about it, it's going to come down to Mamin, Lomberg, maybe Luosterainen. It's hard to even pluck because so many of these guys are playing excellent. Like Luosterainen has been the last 2-3 weeks has just been incredibly consistent, very solid and stable. And as I mentioned earlier, that top line or that fourth line, rather top line, that fourth line has been so consistent. Mamin, we're talking about right now is to turn the corner. Ryan Lomberg has been playing the best hockey of his career over the last several weeks. He's played 11 straight games now, and he's looked really good doing it. So, like, whatever the situation is, somebody that's playing really well is going to come out of the lineup because you have to think that even though those guys are playing well, they're not going to get a spot over a Vetrano or a Tippett or a Hornquist. You could maybe work in some maintenance days, to spread it out a little bit with like they're doing with Joe Thornton. You could see them doing something like that with a Patrick Hornquist as well. But look, this is the good problems to have, right? When you've got too many good players for the lineup, the Panthers forward group is kind of embarrassment of riches in that regard. And it kind of makes you see like how, I don't want to say thin, but you can see it on the defensive side, how when a Forsling goes down, suddenly, because they don't have that solidified bottom six yet. And it's nice that you've seen, Lucius Carlson over the last few games really take his game to another level. He's been picking up the points. He's been playing some noticeable defense. So, I think that kind of tied into the decision today of Kevin Knutson getting waived, which is something else that we heard after practice. If he clears waivers, Knutson will report to AHL Charlotte. We'll see if he gets through waivers, because he's been a pretty solid, bottom pairing guy in the Panthers defensive core. You could think that there's more than a couple of teams that could use that kind of help. And this is the kind of guy that, like Bill Zito might have looked at bringing in a year past. And, that's how we ended up with a Gus Forsling on our team. So I'm catching my breath for a second, man. We really went at it there for talking a lot about those guys. No, before we get to our guest, Shane Marinelli, who's going to be coming up in just a couple of minutes, I did want to just touch on another guy who's really kind of picked it up, and that's Sam Reinhardt. He's been piling up the points. He's been getting more opportunities. He was back on the top power play today in practice. And I just like that he's showing up more across the board, and that he's really like earned his way back into the top six and into that top power play. Now, again, like what happens when Barkov and Duclair are back, for today, we saw that Mammon was on the top line and Reinhardt was on that second line with Huberdeau and Sam Bennett. So we'll see how it all shakes out. I just wanted to give a few little props, Sam Reinhardt, because he's really, just like so many of the guys have, they've really turned a corner. All right, Shane Marinelli coming up in just a second. Before we get to that, I do want to talk about the sponsor of today's show and every show, Intense Nutrition, located at 2540 North University Drive in Coral Springs. This place is off the hook. They are going to help you with all of your supplemental needs, all your vitamin needs. If you want big box prices, you want the good prices, but you want the personal touch of a nice local business, you definitely should stop by Intense Nutrition. Superior quality, wonderful service. They've got you covered for whatever you need for your pre or post-workout regimens. They also offer what they call the Intense Cleanse and Detox, where you can lose 10 to 15 pounds in just 10 days. They're incredibly knowledgeable staff. These guys really know their stuff. They're going to take care of all your vitamin supplement needs. They're going to work with you one-on-one if you need specific stacks, whether you're an aging guy like I'm getting there, a peaking athlete like the guys I cover, or if you just want to fight off cold and flu season, like, look, we all should. So that's Intense Nutrition, located at 2540 North University Drive in Coral Springs, on the corner of University and Royal Palm, or you can just give them a call at 954-775-0257. Intense Nutrition, hit them up. All right, now let's jump to my guest today. Joining me from the fifth line on the 5 Reasons Sports Network right here, our home, is Shane Marinelli. You can follow him on Twitter at Marinelli Shane. There he is. What's up, man? How are you? Thank you so much for joining the Odd Man Rush.
Thank you for having me on. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Definitely. The first thing that I really want to talk about is the first thing that I wanted to talk about on the show today. So now I want to talk to you about it because it's just so awesome. And that's the return of the Comeback Cats. It's been, fun, right? It's still a little crazy, a little nerve wracking. You don't want to live by that blade, die by that blade, but it's been fun, right? So I just wanted to kind of get your take. Like, what do you think is working about this team that they're able to do that? What's sustainable about these Comeback Cats?
Just how deep the skill is, right? Like they're able to just, when they decide to turn it on, there's no point where a line comes off the ice and there's not guys who can't, continue to put pucks on net and doing that. So, you see teams, they just kind of, when the Panthers are like, okay, we got to do this, they just continue to put pressure, and you see teams kind of wear down. The scoring chances just come and come and come. And it's like, well, eventually these are going to get in. I know at the beginning of the year, we talked a lot about, with Alex and Manny on the fifth line was, how are they going to kind of figure out, because they are so deep, with forwards, kind of the second and third line. I mean, the third and fourth lines, but, Ryan Longberg has become more than just a fun guy that's an agitator. I mean, his speed leads to goals all the time. Lusterinen has been, a really huge surprise at center, and, he shows a lot of skill. So, when they are kind of mentally going for it and, they decide, oh, we're down in a game, they just apply too much pressure throughout all the lines, and you can see teams just kind of wilt underneath it.
Yeah, well, that was kind of going to be my follow up. Like, what do you think they really got to clean up right now? Because I mean, obviously they're playing well; they're at the top of the NHL standing, so it's great that how well they're doing. But at the same token, there's still room for improvement, and there's still areas that they can clean up and kind of tighten the screws a little bit, right?
I think so much of what this, and I know especially for the Panthers, and especially after last year, everything they do has to be thinking, how would this work in a playoff series? And everyone knows the things tighten up in the playoffs. And obviously the power play, they've been a little bit better the past couple games, but obviously, your scoring chances in 5-on-5 kind of dwindle, in the playoffs, and you have to kind of depend on the power play, and they got to do a little bit better of taking advantage of those chances. And, when they get to the playoffs, there's going to be times where that comeback is going to be hard because the goalie's just going to stand on his head. So, you are playing with fire, and you run into a team last year that's maybe not as skilled, like the Canadians. They made it all the way through the playoffs, and their goalie got hot, and then they end up, kind of beating some teams
Yeah,
they probably
that'll
shouldn't have.
happen. And that's kind of like a good segue into what I wanted to ask you next. I know Manny was asking this earlier in the chat, and I meant to get to that. Goaltending. Do you think that Sergei Bobrovsky, right? He got off to this amazing start. Suddenly, the goals are starting to leak through again. You think that's a bump in the road, or are we getting back to kind of the Bob we've seen the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think you would be lying to yourself if you just said it's a bump in the road. Maybe it is. He's played great this year, but you just have to go where there's more evidence of him as a Panther. You know what I mean? And there's more evidence of him being the goalie that's kind of underachieved than the goalie that we've seen kind of in the first quarter of this season. So, yeah, it's something definitely to worry about. And, there's also, it just hasn't, it hasn't been consistent. And Knight has, kind of a little bit of his sophomore slump, which, I know even me at the beginning of the year was like, start night, but it had to been expected that he was going to hit, in this league, you're going to struggle at some point, right? You're not just going
No
to,
doubt.
you're not going to roll off, shutting down the Lightning, playing really well in a couple games and start 60 games the next season and be one of the league's best.
Yeah, it's definitely a learning process. I mean, with Knight, I think the good thing is that he's not really being asked to play. It doesn't look like he's going to play more than like 30, 35 games this season, which I think is a really good kind of dip your toe, cup of coffee, first exposure into a full NHL season. I mean, with Bobrovsky, I will say this, like this season it has seemed is kind of like his bounce back, his way of like fighting back and saying, no, I'm still this guy. Right. So I think right now what we're seeing is a great opportunity for him to show us whether that's what this is, and he's going to bounce back and play as well as he did earlier in the year or not. But I think if there's going to be a chance for him to turn things around after, maybe not a bad, he hasn't had a bad stretch. He set the bar really high for himself when the season started. So I think that's kind of where we're going to be judging him for at least the next little while. But I will say this also, he had maybe one of the best practices I've ever seen a goalie have today, like on two different ice surfaces. And look, I get it. It's just practice. We're just talking about practice, right? But still pretty ridiculous. So I'm anxious to see kind of how it plays out for Bob. And I'm obviously hopeful that he's going to continue this resurgent year that we're hoping he has. But as you said, I think what you see most or what you remember most is what we've seen most from him. And that's been two mediocre at best seasons.
Yeah. I also think there is a factor that even with all the scoring and, it does help the Panthers when Barkov and Lundell, they're such great two-way players. It masks a little bit of it. They're still not incredibly deep on the back end. This is Ekblad and Weegar are great, but they're still beyond that. It's nothing that's going to put fear into other top teams in the NHL. So there is still kind of some gaps there where, maybe it, puts a little bit more pressure on the goalie than you'd like.
Yeah, well, I think they've been searching for at least like to get that sixth spot really solidified. I mean, in terms of like a middle pairing, I mean, I'm perfectly fine with a Gus Forsling, whether it's with Gudis or with Montour. They've liked that Forsling Gudis pairing, which is interesting because you got three levels of a solid offensive defenseman. You've got obviously Ekblad and Weeder. Then you've got Forsling, who certainly pushes the pace. You've got Montour, who's got a lot of offensive capabilities. I think right now they're hoping that what we've seen the last couple of games from Lucas Carlson is kind of him blossoming into the player that they were hoping that he would be when they brought him in from Chicago. Personally, I need to see more, kind of what you said about Bob. But it's a good step in the right direction for him. I think that overall you're going to see Bill Zito maybe look to bring in another D or two between now and at least the trade deadline. I don't know. It depends on how things go. It's with Forsling coming back. Yeah, I had to wonder if they try to pull something off before the holiday break. But especially with the emergence of Carlson, we'll see. Obviously, they feel good enough that they can waive Kevin Knutson, which happened today, that they may, at least about their depth. But yeah, it's something interesting to keep an eye on as we move ahead this season. I did want to get your take now on maybe the biggest thing that happened this season, right? Andrew Brunette taking over as head coach as the Panthers were in the middle of one, their best start ever. How do you think he's done so far as the head coach? I know that, if you follow the team on social media, there have been some strong opinions on both sides of the fence. But what's your take been so far for Coach Andrew Brunette?
Well, I think in a way, not only, was it general, it just the whole situation wasn't great, but the timing wasn't great. They were super hot, and just the law of averages in a pro sports, you're going to hit a slump, right? Just throughout the season.
Oh yeah.
There's going to be that tough road trip where you go and say, man, we lost 4 out of 5, or, we only had a 3-point trip, something like that. And you knew that was coming, and it kind of lined up. So it's really tough to tell. Now they've rebounded. They've come back in games. It's with Burnett, it's going to be and I don't want to say unfortunate. Maybe that's the word. We're not really going to find out till he has to push some major lineup buttons or make a decision in a 6-game series with the Capitals. Right? Like, we're not going to find out. I think the leadership of this team of Barkov, Huberdeau, and then you have players like, with Horny and Jumbo are good enough to kind of, that's what you want, right? I said when the whole thing happened with Q, I said, well, it's a good thing they signed players like Jumbo and have players like Horny, these kind of veteran guys who've probably done and seen it all as much as you can, where it's not like a super young team where it's going to affect them a little bit more. So, it's right. There's tons of lineup questions, that they're really strong up front. And, when he has to make that decision between starting a Mammon or pushing somebody else off in a big game, that's maybe when we're going to find out.
Yeah, we started to get a glimpse of that right before Barkov got hurt. Remember, because all of a sudden the Panthers were kind of stumbling a little bit, and then Barkov and Huberdeau were together again, which we hadn't really seen very little of over the last couple of seasons. So I think we got to taste. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, does the Barkov Huberdeau, that always feels like I don't want to say the panic move, but like it's always
you're bashing the glass.
For every coach, it's like, what do we do? Oh, let's just put Barkov and Huberdeau together, right? Like that seems like
to be fair. I mean, their chemistry.
Yes.
I mean that if there is a panic button to hit, though, I mean that's kind of like the one to go with.
Yeah, but it's not
now when they. Well, yeah, I think what
going.
Yeah,
forward.
well, I think the reason they can get away with it now is just because they're so deep that even if they put them together, it's not going to make the rest of the forward group like just fall off the face of the earth. Like it used to be, you needed to split them up so you'd have at least 2 really solid forward lines that can push the pace. Now they can't stay together, and you can still have another line with a Bennett and a Reinhardt and a Verhage or Duclair. I mean, there's options.
And this is always the question in hockey. You never know, but how much did just the Huberdeaus and Barkovs, benefit the other guys? Like in the end, right. You can put probably every winger on the team on that Verhaeghe and Barkov line, and Barkov's going to turn him into a guy that's, probably putting around a point a night, right? You saw that last year in the playoffs with Marsic. He skated on the Barkov line, and the guy puts a couple in the back of the net. It's anyone. So when you're kind of, you want some talent, some of the guys that you want guys to be elevated by Huberdeau and Barkov. They make you so much more of it. They make the teams more deeper than it already is when they're not skating separately.
For all the talent, all the guys that I just named in that Panthers forward group, I don't think anybody would argue, and these guys included, that Barkov and Huberdeau are kind of in a tier to their own. So the more you can spread it out, the better. It's just good that they have the options that they do, and back to your original point, it'll be interesting to see how Brunette utilizes those options as the season goes on, because like you said, it's a long season. There's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be stretches where you need some help. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but guys are probably going to get hurt because that's hockey. And the Panthers are a team that, for the first time in maybe ever, they're really built to survive the season. God willing, they'll be healthy enough when you get to the playoffs to have what they've constructed. And it's crazy to think about what they could put together, because this lineup with a decently playing goaltender, I don't want to say decent. You need a good goalie in the playoffs, right? Like look at Montreal. They were an average team last year, and Carey Price just kind of willed them to the final. And then at the end of the day, nothing beats the best goalie in the world, except maybe the Panthers, which we'll find out in a couple months. Now, the one thing I definitely wanted to ask you about, Shane, is something that I know you've got, somebody that I know you guys have talked about a lot on your shows, and that's Anton Lundell, the rookie, this amazing young Finn who is just, he's like a mini Barkov out there. And the fact that he just turned 20 years old, the Panthers may have got a home run with this kid, right?
Like a back-to-back grand slam home runs. Just think how much you watch him, and just, what are they teaching in Finland? Up in
What's in the water in Helsinki?
I know. It's like, it's so uncanny to Barkov, because he does so many of those little things, or just reaching a stick in the right place, and making sure the team isn't on. There's an odd man rush. He pokes it out and forces them to reset and get back. And let's be real. You want to go through the Lightning? What did the Lightning kill us on last year? Their power play, right? Whenever they got that going with Kucherov and stuff, it felt like, okay, the goal's inevitable here. But he adds so much to that. And just the fact that Q, who's not a coach traditionally in the past, that trusted young players. I know last year was like frustration with Tippett was kind of in and out of the lineup. It's like, okay. For him, night one, he was on your top penalty kill.
Yeah.
Just shows like kind of some crazy trust. And he makes the team so deep. I do like, a veteran like Reinhardt playing with him. I liked when they made that move. I think a few games into the season, when Reinhardt was originally with the Barkov for Hagee. I think that's a good kind of mix. I want to see him playing with vets, but he just, if you consider thinking about the team last year, and Duclair's become more of a complete player, and a couple of the other guys, you think about that Tampa series, and you're like, well, I think Ekblad alone would have probably made a difference in a game or two in that series. Now you throw in someone like Lundell, it's
right. Scales tip a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Shane, I want to thank you so much for taking a little time and coming on the Odd Man Rush today with me. For everybody watching, you can find Shane on Twitter at Marinelli Shane. You can find him and the rest of the Fifth Line crew right here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network YouTube channel. But Shane, thank you again so much, and we'll definitely have to do this again later in the season.
Thank you.
All right, brother. Be well. And yeah, that's gonna do it for this episode of the Odd Man Rush. Real quick, I see some of your questions. Shelby asking about if the Panthers would be interested in like whichever the goalie that shakes out in Dallas. Shelby, I'll be honest, I don't think the Panthers are really shopping for a goalie right now, as long as Bob and Knight and Gibson, they're all healthy and they're all maintaining. I think the Panthers are pretty content with where they're at goaltending wise. So right now, like I said earlier, I think the focus, if anything, is going to be on adding depth to the defensive ranks. Joseph, thank you. I appreciate that, man. Glad you enjoyed it. I hope everybody else watching enjoyed it as well. We'll see you back here next week. Once again, Monday at 2:00 for the next episode of the Odd Man Rush. Hopefully more wins, just maybe another less palpitations of the heart. We don't need the comebacks anymore. But yeah, so thank you again to everybody watching here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Thank you to my sponsor, Intense Nutrition in Coral Springs. And we will see you next week. And thank you to Manny for producing. Manny, you are the best. Love you, brother. All right, everyone. Take care. Bye.